Reliability isn't a feature. It's the foundation every other feature stands on. And when it cracks, nothing else you built matters. But the part most companies get wrong isn't the outage itself. It's how they handle what happens next. Right now, the AI company I've been the most publicly bullish on is making exactly that mistake. And if they don't fix it, they're going to hand the opening to someone else the same way their competitors handed it to them. So how do we measure reliability, and how can companies work to improve it? That's the topic on today's Tech Thaumaturge. Everybody watching this has had this experience. You open a tool you depend on and something is off. The button doesn't work, the page loads halfway, something feels wonky. The first question isn't what broke, it's is this me or is it them? How fast you can answer that determines whether you keep trusting the company on the other side of the problem. When engineers talk about reliability, they count in nines. More nines is more reliable. The math gets pretty brutal pretty fast. 99% uptime is 2 nines. Sounds good on the slide, but run the numbers and it's 3.5 days of downtime per year, a long weekend offline. Nobody in enterprise software accepts that. 9.9% is 3 nines, 8 hours and 45 minutes a year, a full workday. 99.99% is 4 nines, 52 minutes, about an episode of a Netflix show. 99.999% is 5 nines, 5 minutes and 15 seconds, less time than it takes to make coffee. Here's the rule of thumb engineers work with. Each additional 9 costs roughly 10 times more to deliver than the last. Payment processors target 4 nines, telecom targets 5, and the spreadsheet nobody in your company uses targets 2. Your level of paranoia scales with how bad it is if you're wrong. Reliability lives in percentages. Users don't. Users experience a broken button on a Tuesday morning and they want to know who to blame. That's where a status page comes in. A status page is a dedicated site, almost always status.somecompany.com, where a business publicly reports the health of its services. A Stripe engineer named Amber Fang built one of the first influential examples back in 2012. By July of 2016, Atlassian acquired a status page, the platform most of these sites now run on. The format has become standard. Each component, the website, the API, the mobile app, gets a color-coded state. Operational, degraded, partial outage, or major outage. Below that, a time-stamped history of incidents. Most let you subscribe by email, SMS, or webhook. The logic is simple. Tell people what's wrong before they ask. Transparency builds trust faster than perfection ever could. That's the theory, at least. The problem is self-reporting. Here's the catch that most people miss. The status page is self-reported. The same company having the outage is the one deciding when to admit they're having an outage. A former AWS engineer named Nick Humrick went on the record saying that flipping an AWS component from green to anything else was a human decision, and managers making the call had every incentive to avoid it. Serious issues got displayed as green with a small info icon because nobody wanted to be the engineer who cried yellow. There's a running joke in the cloud community. Corey Quinn, one of the louder voices in the AWS ecosystem, ran a site called stop.lying.cloud. It existed because he got tired of AWS insisting everything was fine while his customers' production systems were on fire. The December 2021 AWS outage is a textbook example. Third-party monitors caught the failure within minutes. AWS's own dashboard didn't update for close to an hour. An hour of all systems are fine, everything's fine, look away, while a significant chunk of the internet was offline. That is why sites like Downtime exist. Downtime was founded in 2012 in the Netherlands, and what it does is crowdsource user reports to catch outages and vendors that haven't been admitted yet. When the vendor says it's green and Downtime shows 10,000 reports in the last hour, trust the one not paying the PR bill. They're probably going to be more accurate. Now let's talk about what downtime actually costs. This isn't abstract. Downtime has a price tag, and it's getting bigger. A 2024 survey from ITIC, an IT research firm, found that 90% of mid-sized and large enterprises report downtime costs exceeding $300,000 per hour. For 41% of them, it runs between $1 and $5 million per hour. When Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp went dark for 6 hours back in October of 21 because of a bad network configuration, Meta lost at least $61 million in ad revenue in one afternoon. Downtime logged over 10 million user reports, the largest spike in that site's history. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised it didn't crash. In July of 24, one bad update from a security vendor called CrowdStrike crashed 8.5 million Windows machines worldwide. Fortune 500 companies alone absorbed an estimated $5.4 billion in damages. Delta Airlines said it cost them $500 million on its own. Those are headline numbers. The quieter one is the users who just quietly leave, though. A 2022 survey from Amplify found that 86% of consumers will walk from a brand they've trusted after just 2 poor experiences. 2, not 10, 2 bad experiences. Anthropic is in danger now of repeating that same mistake, which brings me to the company I promised to talk about when I started. In my last video, I walked through why engineers are switching to Claude Code. A big part of that story was what the competition was doing wrong. Cursor changed its pricing in June of 2025, surprised users with overnight bill jumps, and had to publicly apologize for that choice. Later that year, Cursor shipped a bug that corrupted chat histories. Earlier this year, they confirmed another one that was silently reverting code changes. Windsurf, another major competitor, was split between Google and Cognition and effectively ceased to exist. That's a big part of how Claude Code went from a research preview to the most used AI coding tool across the industry in just over a year. But here's the uncomfortable part. Anthropic is now showing the exact same warning signs they capitalized on to get where they are. Go to status.claude.com. Claude's AI's 90-day uptime sits at 98.79% as of this recording. That's below 2.5 nines. Claude Code sits at 99.26, well below the 3.9 baseline most businesses assume when they bet on a platform. In September of 25, Anthropic themselves published a post-mortem admitting that 3 overlapping bugs had been degrading Claude code quality for weeks. In their own words, quote, "The issues exposed critical gaps that we should have identified earlier." March of 26 was bad enough that the tech press took to calling it Anthropic's Madcap March. At least 5 user-visible outages in 1 month. In April 15th, Downtime logged thousands of reports across multiple hours as Claude, the API, and Claude Code all degraded together. And it's not just outages. Rate limits, the ceiling on how much you are allowed to use a product in a certain period of time, have become their own category of trust damage these days. Users on a $200 a month plan have reported hitting their 5-hour session limit in under 90 minutes in some circumstances. To be clear, none of this makes Claude a bad product. It's still one of the best tools out there, and the Claude Opus model is still one of my favorites that exists today. But that's exactly the problem. That's what people said about Cursor 18 months ago. So here's some things you should and could do. First, you need to bookmark status pages that you depend on. Status.claude.com, status.openai.com, github.com, etc. The first question when something feels off is this me or is it them? And the answer should take 30 seconds to find. Next, cross-check with Down Detector when something feels off. Vendor pages lag. If the vendor says green and Down Detector says red, you should probably trust Down Detector until the vendor proves otherwise. Next, ideally, don't build single vendor dependencies. If your job or your product depends on one AI provider being available, you're one bad afternoon away from a real problem. Have a fallback plan written down for when this happens. Next, watch the pattern, not the incident. One outage is a bad day. A quarterly trend of them is a signal about where the company's priorities actually sit, especially when it comes to bug fixes. Reliability is the compounding interest of trust. You barely notice it when everything's working. You notice every second once it stops working. For Anthropic specifically, this is the moment. They got the opening they got because of the competitors fumbled on exactly this kind of problem. Scaling through this period without cracking is going to be harder than shipping the next model. If they don't figure it out, someone else will, and the switching story will happen again, just in reverse. I'm curious where you're all sitting on this. Are you running into Claude outages or rate limits yourself? Does it feel overblown from where you're sitting? Or do you feel like this is a genuine problem or a consistent problem? Drop it in the comments. And if you're building any API right now, I'd like to hear what your fallback plan looks like, just, for when the next outage happens.